So let's start.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. We would like to welcome you to our webinar on the topic of connecting with your audiences. This webinar is part of the online training program Medinea On Air. It is co-funded by Erasmus Plus and produced by 6 partners from the Mediterranean region, from France, Italy, Malta, Portugal, Slovenia, and Turkey. Medinea On Air aims to provide specific preparation for classical musicians and improvisers, to enrich young musicians' musical training with 38 live interactive webinars led by renowned artists and high-qualified pedagogues. They are free and open to all who register. My name is Robbie BEAHRS, and I'm an ethnomusicologist and sound artist from Minnesota, currently living in Istanbul. I teach at the Center for Advanced Studies in Music, or MIAM, at Istanbul Technical University, and we are part of the Medinea network here in Turkey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jane Harrison, and I am a musicologist from Ohio in the United States. And like Robbie, I also live in Istanbul, and I also teach at MIAM. In this webinar, we will share 8 ways with you for how to connect more effectively with your audiences. We have combined an arts marketing point of view with what we have learned as music scholars about how people connect through the medium of music. We hope the results will be tips that are easy to understand and use, but are also grounded in our work as musicologists. We encourage you to have successful and also meaningful interactions as you make music at your events. These ideas should work well for a wide variety of genres, ensembles, and event types. We have ordered the points that we'll make in a quasi-chronological series of steps, but in an actual project, we realized that you would find yourself working on many of them concurrently. We will go through our 8 points and then have time for a discussion moderated by Robbie. So let's get started.
Okay, so number 1, clarify your brand as a musician. So who are you? What's your story? We recommend that you clarify your identity as a performer, artist, or ensemble. You might want to do some research to get inspiration from what other artists are doing in various fields. Craft your story around your connection that you make through your music. What is your artistic mission statement? Do you also think of yourself as a creative entrepreneur? That is, as somebody working in the creative sector of the economy who is bringing some kind of value to the marketplace. Where do you want to position yourself in the world of music? That is to say, in popular music, classical, jazz, traditional, or experimental. Do you work across genre or media? Does your music seek to communicate a message? If so, tell us what it is. Be consistent and authentic with your brand and message. I would like to challenge those younger musicians in the webinar today to write down 3 keywords that define you as an artist. If you feel comfortable sharing them, you can type them into the chat and we'll use them in our discussion later today in the Q&A. 3 keywords, that's your challenge. Write them down.
Okay, number 2, clarify the nature of the specific project that you're doing. And I'll talk about this in terms of what, who, and where. So first of all, what is it? Are you doing a live event? Is it a concert, a workshop, a lecture demonstration, a competition? Also think about if you need funding for it, if you want to make income from it, and how you will do those things. We really suggest that you think about making a theme for a particular project. And as I'm talking about themes and giving some of my own examples, we would love it if people could put in the chat any concerts that they've gone to or events that had really, cool, nice themes. So feel free to write those to us. Let me give some examples to you now. Okay, so I have a few visuals up here. The first thing on the left, this is a poster from an event that the Sonic Arts Department did at our institution recently at MIAM. And this was really nice because in reality, this was a concert for first year students. So they could have just titled it like first year, fall semester concert, but they didn't do that. Instead, they actually gave a theme to their event, Fold Unfold, and they made this really cool poster. And I thought it was quite effective, and it gives the event a different feel than just labeling it something basic like first year students concert. The other two posters are both coming from the Alinea Ensemble. One of them is this concert they called Groceries, and they describe it as a mixed bag of a concert featuring 3 different world premieres. So that's why they've called it Groceries. And then on the far right, they had an event called 20 Answers, Alinea plus Pamela Z. I think the way that they've designed the poster here is really cute with the 8-ball. It's referencing that toy like from the 80s. And overall, I think both posters are well done, bright and colorful, and grab your attention. Then I also have an example from the well-known ensemble Klangform am Wien. This is their Instagram page. I think it's very well done. The first thing is they have this cool poster, which has a bit of animation. And also on the right side, they've told us why they called it Bruchpunkt. So they have nice descriptions for their events. Why did they call them what they called them? They have this event called Fermata, which is a repeating like discussion that they do with artists. And I think they have a really clever name for that, Fermata. And you can see here that the branding is consistent from one Fermata poster to another, colorful, well done. And then finally, they've had a series of concerts all featuring contemporary Polish composers called Polish Perspectives. And again, they have a nice description of what they're doing there, like why they're interested in these Polish composers. And then nice consistent branding. I love the abstract paintings that they've put behind, in the background for each poster. Yeah, there are a lot of nice examples out there. And this was just one that I knew about this group, as many of us do. And I thought it was really nice what they were doing with Instagram. Okay, so those are some examples for themes. Like I said, if you have any of your own, please share those with us. Okay, so that's a little bit about the what. Now, what about who? Who will be at the concert, at the event? As you are creating the theme, consider who you imagine being in the audience. Do you have a target demographic? That can be in terms of age, prior education, interests, likes and dislikes. How narrow or broad a group of people do you want to try to engage? Also consider what the audience will ideally be doing during the event. Will they sit quietly? Will they dance? Will they interact with the performers? Do you want them to sing and clap along? I think you should ask yourself, are there communities, especially locally, that relate to your theme that you might reach out to directly and invite? Are there also groups of people that have never come to events like yours or have never come specifically to your events, and you would like to think about how can I maybe directly reach out to them or try to engage them? Something else is the notion of repair. Musicologists and ethnomusicologists are currently discussing repair and music quite a bit in our scholarly communities. And what that means is basically how music can be used to heal individual people or to heal societies in some way. You might think about incorporating some kind of a repair aspect into your event. For example, after the recent pandemic, maybe people would benefit from an event that is especially interactive, to help us get going socially once again. Okay, then the final thing here is the where. Where will it happen? So consider your vision for the project, and in light of that, consider different venues and how appropriate they would be for what you envision happening. Of course, you have to ask, is this going to be online or is this going to be at a live venue? And many decisions will follow from that. Again, when you're thinking about the venue, think about what you want the people to be doing. Let's say, for example, that you want people to be dancing to the music that you're playing. Okay, if that's the case, doing the event at a concert hall or really anywhere at a university might not make people want to dance. Think about having that event at a bar where people are more likely to want to dance to the music.
Okay, so number 3, share your message with the world. So we recommend that you communicate your project using images, audiovisual media, and text. You might want to use a mood board to come up with the colors, textures, or sounds that will tell your project's story. And be creative, in expressing your vision. There's so much out there today that you can be inspired by. Come up with a design that's consistent with your brand and that matches your project. So feel free to reach out to graphic designers or media artists. But remember, we live in an age of do-it-yourself. So much of this can be done and learned online through experimentation and through checking out other videos, including this webinar. Take care to craft your message thoughtfully. So by that, we mean in a way that's authentic, but also not offensive. Ask your friends and colleagues for feedback before you post it publicly. Remember that your audience is probably encountering your message for the first time. So explain to them, why should they engage with your project? What makes it special? Make your message accessible by avoiding using too much technical jargon. In today's world, it goes without saying that you will want to engage your audiences using social media and other platforms. So whether you use Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, or other social media, think about how the platform you will use will actually help to connect to different kinds of demographics. Since video is usually the most engaging type of online content, we really recommend making a short artistic video reel for your event. Here are some examples of effective ways to share your message with the world. Think about the overall flow and layout of the messaging. This is especially important if you use social media, like in these examples here from Instagram. You see here on the right, a concert poster that recently happened. Also, just the color story happening in this Instagram I found really engaging. So here you might consider using text or graphics in the video to share more information about your music, like in this example. Here, a well-known pianist from Turkey named Ayşe Deniz makes her message accessible using text on the screen. She also opens up some of the meanings in her music and teaches her audience how to play an original composition using piano keyboard and graphics. And she does so in just a matter of a few seconds, so it's very engaging. I'll just show you a short clip here.
I will now show you how I play my composition, Su. Su means water in Turkish, and this music represents different states of it. The left hand is based on 4 different patterns that repeat throughout the entire piece. It's kind of like the Amélie soundtrack. This is our first chord. But the way we play it is this: top and bottom at the same time, the middle one afterwards, and repeat.
So like many musicians today, Ayşe also uses Linktree as a way to connect all of her social media profiles into one place. This is a really common strategy that people are using. You see, she says here at the top, thanks for being a fan, join my community. You can see she includes a link to a sign up for her newsletter, some links to media featuring her work, some classes that she offers, sheet music, and links to her Spotify, Apple Music, and other social media accounts. There are, of course, other options besides social media, if you can believe it, such as local radio, TV stations, newspapers, and also online magazines. It's always a good idea to reach out to media outlets in your community. They might be interested in featuring your project in one of their publications. Depending on the nature of your project, it would be helpful to use informal media such as posters, flyers, and word of mouth. This works especially well if you want to attract audiences on university campuses or at cultural institutions in your hometown. Remember to give audiences a call to action. This is really important if you want them to engage immediately. So by that, I mean, click to buy a ticket, follow me on Spotify, share your post on social media, subscribe to your channel, join your email newsletter. Set up the stakes for your audience to act quickly. What can be won or lost in not taking action right away? This research comes from marketing, but we've kind of learned that audiences need to hear a message at least 8 times before they remember it and before they act. So remember to post reminders and repeat your message consistently across your different social media.
Number 4, Make your event a lively musical experience. Recognize that a performance is always necessarily a new event that you create with other people, even if you're playing compositions that have been made and performed many times very long ago in the past. The past is past. You don't really have access to it anymore. Think about what you want to happen in the event in the present moment and what you want to say in the present moment, rather than trying to just accurately reproduce pieces or past experiences. Ask yourself what else is happening in the present moment in the world right now or in your community that might relate to what you're trying to do through this event. If you do not do this, then you risk an uninspired and flat experience for the audience, even though what you play might seem very accurate to them. Even worse, if you don't think about these things, you might end up perpetuating biases and inequalities that exist in our societies, such as systemic racism and sexism. For example, if you generate a program from the classic repertoire of an instrument, what is the reason for choosing those pieces? We suggest going beyond following habits and traditions just for their own sake. Maybe you do have a great inspiring reason for making an all Beethoven program. So reflect that in the theme of the concert, the materials you generate for it, and your messaging. Be thoughtful and intentional as you make the programming decisions. The audience will notice and pick up on your vibrant energy. A good way to envision your active, intentional role as a performer is to imagine that you are a storyteller who will lead the audience through an event with a narrative shape that you design. What will be the parts and the functions of the story, beginning, middle, and end, or something else? To be an effective storyteller, you must connect with the audience with empathy towards both them and the subject of your story, and also with a kind of authority, so that they want to follow you as a kind of leader through the experience. You can even think about treating the audience as a kind of hero in the story, where they will be inspired and they will undergo some kind of a transformation during the event. Keep in mind that being an audience member is also performative and participatory. Listening is a verb, just like performing. Even if they only sit there while thoughts run in an automatic way through their heads, people will still do something at your concert. You should decide what you want them to do. Call out to the audience with invitations to act that are embedded in the way you design the event. Now, on the one hand, it is true that many people often come to music events because they want to relax. So they might not want to feel forced to move a lot or talk to other people or to dance. Okay, even in that case, you can still offer people a vibrant, internal, imaginative experience, all while they sit calmly in their chairs. And you can guide them into a particular flow of a huge variety of emotions.
Number 5, be collaborative in your artistic vision and build a sense of community. So here we suggest that you invite others to get involved before, during, and after your event. You might want to collaborate with other musicians, composers, media artists, or even dancers in realizing your vision. Also, remember to think about sound engineers and producers, often unacknowledged roles in these performances. By including more collaborators in your project, you increase your ability to grow as an artist and attract a wider audience. This might seem obvious, but do consider working with other musicians in the Medinea network. One of the goals of our webinars is to connect you with other musicians from across the Mediterranean and potentially reach new audiences that way. You might want to include interactive activities as part of your project, such as workshops, lectures, discussions, or even documentary films. Probably the most important part of a live music event is actually, especially something coming out of the pandemic, we're recognizing, connecting with your audience personally. It can be a special experience for your audience to greet you afterwards. In some cases, you may even want to organize a reception with food or drinks following your concert. How will the connection you create with your audience last beyond the performance? Will you live stream the event or post it as a video for later viewing on your social media? Think about building communities and networks that have durability beyond the performance event. Networking at your concert can lead to future performances, funding opportunities, and it also helps to build this sense of community. So in this video, a performance artist from Bulgaria asks his audience to come up on stage and actually take selfies with him while he's performing. So not only does the audience get to become a part of the performance, but they're also asked to post their photos and videos to social media and create a sense of virality and community and memory that goes beyond the event. It's a pretty creative strategy, I think, for doing this, connecting with your audience. Let's just watch a minute of this.
The more we feel, the more we lie, we die, dear. The more we kiss, and the more we fly away. More, yeah, the more we lie, we die, dear. The more we kiss, the more we fly away.
Number 6, craft program notes consciously. Okay, the first question here is actually to ask yourself, are program notes beneficial for this particular event? Will this particular audience appreciate them, read them, understand what to do with them? Will the environment that the audience be in permit them to read the notes? Will there be adequate lighting? Is it the kind of ambiance where people will stop for several minutes and read something that you've written? These kinds of notes can be particularly useful for avant-garde music or electroacoustic music, situations where the audience will probably not have a frame of reference that they will bring to the experience. And I'm referencing a study here, which you'll see on our last slide. So think about this frame of reference issue. Do you want to suggest a frame of reference? Or do you want to leave that totally up to the audience? To achieve your goals for the event, to articulate the theme, does the audience need to share an understanding of what's going to happen with each other or with you, with the musicians? Or again, do you want to leave that up to them to imagine on their own? You might think about these questions and decide that an informal speech to the audience would be more effective than program notes. Let's say that you think about it, you decide to use program notes. So if you do, remember that program notes being written communication will move the concert experience towards the realm of academia and the associations that come to us about schools, books, and reading. Is that what you want for this experience? Also, keep in mind that anything that you write down will be more likely to be taken as fact because of the culture that we bring towards things that we read that are written. So be careful about what you say and also how you phrase the things that you say. Whether you have program notes printed on paper or notes that people access with the QR code or that you have beamed up onto a screen over the stage, think of program notes as a mode of personal communication, not just giving the facts about the piece. You can ask yourself and write about, why did you choose this repertoire? What is your personal connection to it? What kind of journey did you go through to make the music, to practice for the concert? Which languages will you use? Maybe you need to write in more than one language. And what kind of a voice will you use to tell your story? More formal, informal, more comical? You can use program notes to empower the audience to take an imaginative journey in real time. We also encourage you to revisit your message branding and make that branding consistent across all of your performance materials, including any program notes. And then finally, on this point, remember to acknowledge and thank your teachers, mentors, and other important people who have helped you along the way.
Number 7, engage respectfully with the web of meanings associated with your performance. So how can you use your performance to educate your audiences about the performance traditions that have shaped you as a musician? Consider any historical influences, musical techniques, or cross-cultural interactions that are invoked by your performance. For example, are you using any extended techniques that are not commonly practiced? Are you sharing a music tradition that is unique to a particular community or geographic area? How does your identity as a performer relate to the music you're playing? So for example, do your musical choices connect with any particular languages, countries, genders, belief systems, or ethnicities? What is your relationship to the individuals and communities associated with your repertoire or musical traditions in your performance? Consider how your project is inclusive of historically underrepresented communities and engages in intercultural dialogue. Are you engaging in a culturally respectful way? And if so, how will you know? Cultural appropriation is this term we use to kind of talk about a disrespectful or unacknowledged adoption of the beliefs, practices, or ideas of other people in society. In particular, it can be problematic when a dominant member of society uses the cultural traditions of minorities without permission or without participation from a member of that community in your project. In addition, think about what kinds of social or political messages your performance might be sending. Are you using your concert to raise awareness for some issues happening in the world? Are you aware of how current events might shape the way your audience interprets your performance theme? Take care to share your music in a way that is ethically conscious, with a message that is inspiring and transformational for your audiences. So here are some examples, and there are many we could draw from here. One from Bustan Abraham Quartet, which brought together Israeli and Palestinian musicians playing a variety of musical traditions. Another example of a collaborative concert between a violinist from Austria and a pianist from Ukraine, who were raising money for children impacted by the war. Of course, it goes without saying that you should exercise some thought and care in deciding whether to do a concert with a specific social or political message. In any case, we advocate for responsible citizenship in speaking out about issues that are important to you as an artist, who's also a part of a social and political world.
Number 8, and this is our last point. Work with specialists to strategize about how to connect with your audiences. We are here to help. Ethnomusicologists, historical musicologists, music publicists, and other performers can be good sources for enriching your musicianship and your performance project, and also people with technical knowledge, like sound engineers or people who work in graphic design, etc. Don't hesitate to reach out to specialists also regarding your event designs and your branding efforts. We know that we have just thrown a lot at you in this webinar, and the things that we're suggesting will definitely involve some work. But we as music researchers have seen again and again that music is fundamentally about people connecting with each other. And there are so many different ways to go about doing that, but it helps to have a plan. We hope that no matter how you go about it, you will have fun connecting with your audiences in a way that leaves a memorable impression. So those were our 8 points about connecting with your audience. And to review, this is all 8 of the points. Number 1, clarify your brand as a musician. Number 2, clarify the nature of your project. Number 3, share your message with the world. Number 4, make your event a lively musical experience. Number 5, be collaborative in your artistic vision and create a community. Number 6, craft program notes consciously. Number 7, engage respectfully with the web of meanings in your performance. And number 8, we are here to help.
So thank you so much for listening today. We now have some time for a discussion. Here's our contact information, and then here's also a few of the references that we mentioned today in our presentation. Thank you again for listening. Feel free to type your questions into the chat or raise your hand if you want to ask a specific question. So maybe we could start with the suggestion I posed in point number 1. And I'd like to encourage you, if you're here right now, please turn on your video. We've been looking at some blank boxes for the last 30 minutes, and it would be wonderful to see who's actually here with us. Great to see a few of you with your cameras on, and thank you for doing that. So would anyone, whether you're a young musician or you're a more experienced musician, would anyone like to share maybe a few of the keywords that they associate with their musical brand, that is with their identity as a performer, their instrument, their country of origin, or another question if you have one. Okay, Alessandra.
Yeah, so it was all very quick. Thank you so much. It was so interesting and very useful. But as you said, it's something that we're gonna have to go on like in in a few time, because it's very a lot. And it was very quick at the beginning. I don't know if I got the assignment right, but I wrote about my music and about what the things that I like the most about what I do and what I desire to do. My keywords were communication, roots, and groove, because I work a lot with R&B. So those were my keywords. I don't know if that's useful in some way.
I missed the first one, so I heard roots and groove.
Roots, groove, and communication.
And communication, yeah. Well, so first of all, there's no wrong answer. Really, this is just an exercise in trying to kind of create some intention and sort of design how we should interact with you. But of course, another good way to do it is just to also think about, ask your friends, because a lot of times your friends actually know your brand even better than you do. But yeah, those are all great ways to think about music as communication. I'm curious which roots you're engaging with.
I've been working with jazz music a lot for my whole life. So I've been working a lot with Black music, and the problem about cultural appropriation is very present to me, because I'm not from that culture, and I've always studied that kind of music, and I've worked a lot with R&B, neo soul, and all of that. And for my degree, I actually digged a little bit in my own roots, and I started studying popular music from the place that I'm from, so Sardinia, here in Italy. So yeah, recently I've been engaging a lot with my own roots, so popular music in Italy and in the Mediterranean area altogether. Yeah.
The ethnomusicology of that region is so rich, and I teach it in so many classes. So I love the island of Sardinia, and I have been there before. So it's wonderful that you share that tradition. Just one comment about cultural appropriation, since I know it was a lot and coming fairly quickly. We will post this webinar for review later, so you can go back and watch this online. But about cultural appropriation, one of the things I've learned from that is that if you have a dialogue with a member of someone who is in that community, or if you participate or collaborate with them, many of the problems are oftentimes solved by just talking about it a little bit. It's oftentimes that cultural appropriation is a problem when it's only like a sample and you're remixing it and you don't really know anything about it. But if you are familiar with the tradition, it's historically rooted, if it's respectful and you're even participating or collaborating with someone, I usually think that that's part of an intercultural dialogue, and we all do that all the time, especially living in the Mediterranean.
Thank you for that clarification. It's something that I've been thinking a lot about. So yeah, thank you so much.
Any other questions, or is there someone else who would like to maybe share a little bit about their musical brand or any kind of event? Another question that Jane asked was if there's any kind of musical event where there was a specific kind of connection with the audience, whether that's a live streamed event or an in-person event during the pandemic, after the pandemic. Part of what we're trying to think through here are just strategies, but we know that there are a lot of other experiences out there that we haven't covered today.
Robbie, maybe I can share an example. I didn't give you any examples about the program notes topic. One of the reasons for that is that me personally, I haven't seen a lot of great examples actually of program notes that I really felt like were engaging and personal in the ways that I described to you. But I did think of one thing, and this was actually just, it was a senior composition recital at the university where I was an undergrad. And I remembered that the composer wrote program notes, as composers often do, for his pieces, but he also made it personal. And I remember that he wrote a poem as part of the program notes, and the poem was about doing that recital. And that's like the only program note that I can remember that I ever read. And in that case, it also worked well because he was at his university, and a lot of us who were there, you know, we knew him well. So maybe in that case, being especially personal, you know, I think he read his audience well, but I remember that being really moving. And I can even remember how the poem ended. And that was like 20 years ago, you know? So think about your audience and what kind of connection do you have with them? And especially if you already have these durable connections going with some of the people there, then that would make more sense for you to be more personal. And that's just an example that I thought of. I also thought of the example of some of these composers like Arnold Schoenberg or Gustav Mahler, you know? So they would really kind of pour their hearts out as composers in more of a formal way, but they would really write about what they thought about music, not just, you know, this symphony has 2 themes, stuff like that. And actually, you know, today in particular, the program notes of Schoenberg and Mahler are really important sources about what those people thought about music for historical musicologists, you know, like me. So I think those might also be, you know, from a different time, but those are also good examples. You know, I mean, those have stood the test of time for like over 100 years. Those notes they wrote.
You know, and I could add on that also in the world of ethnomusicology, where I'm more familiar, the same could be said for liner notes, because I would suggest that many of the more significant ethnomusicological contributions to the world are in the form of really well-written liner notes to, you know, world music albums, traditional albums. And even one of my mentors from the United States, he really believed, even after writing 3 monographs and a number of scholarly articles, he really believed that his liner notes with Smithsonian Folkways were his most significant scholarly impact, because they would just be, you know, read and consumed and would oftentimes be the point of entry for this music, you know, for a lot of people. So in terms of that educational mission, I think a lot of us who have traditional backgrounds and classical backgrounds across the Mediterranean, there's a lot of education we can do about intercultural dialogue. And a lot of that can come in the form of like well-crafted liner notes for an album, or maybe the equivalent would be something like well-crafted captions and things for social media when you're sharing things. Any other questions?
If I can just add something about the program notes, just as an advice for everybody listening, remember to give them actually to the audience, because that happened to me, that I wrote them. I was so, how do you say it in English? I was nervous for my degree, for my first level degree. And I wrote about, like, I have a degree in jazz composition. And that was very emotional for me, because I digged into my roots, and my grandma just passed and everything. So it was all very emotional, and I forgot to give the program notes to the audience. I still have all of them here in my place. So yeah, just remember to actually give them to the audience.
That's a good one. Manolis, hello.
Yes, hello, Jane, hello, Robert. Yeah, well, I mean, I would like to stay on the program notes and the content of the program notes. So it is really a big question whether we should include technical things or aesthetic things, or like things about aesthetics and the general inspiration and the rationale behind behind the work. I just want to say, well, I mean, apart from the objective thing, because apart from the subjective thing, because it's very, very, really personal whether a composer, a creator would like to include things that, well, I mean, regarding their tools in order to compose the music, and these tools refers to technical. So, of course, it's very subjective. But on the other hand, what I notice is that the more technology a concert includes, the more people tend to include like technical stuff, and sometimes they stay there. It is really, nowadays it is really very rare to see in a concert of like strictly acoustic music. They are rare by itself, but anyway, it is very rare nowadays to see people like acoustic composers include technical things like themes and motives and Like I did this material, this thing with the material, I got these notes, all these things. Whereas in cutting edge, for example, concerts, yes, they do. Yes, they do. So I think also it has to do with the general interest of the public, with the interest of the general public of the society. People tend to be really interested in technology, in yeah, audiovisual or whatever. Yeah, I would like just to mention this thing. If we have people who are performers, composers, I don't know. What's your opinion on that? Do you believe that we should still include technological stuff, or like aesthetics in our works, or like technical things in works in your creation? I believe that there should be some kind of a balance. But to be honest, when I compose electroacoustic works or something which has which deals with live electronics, especially, I tend to be very technical.
Yeah, I think that to me, so I'm thinking about it, coming as like a cultural scholar. I think that the key is really to think about who's going to be there in the audience, or who do you want to be in the audience, Because I'm thinking like, Stockhausen here is kind of like this famous example. I mean, Stockhausen got quite a bit of crossover attention, from people like in the rock world who were interested in more avant-garde stuff. And actually what he was doing, throughout his career, he did things that were quite technical. And I think though part of the appeal of his music was that, okay, it was technical, but also conceptually, it was interesting, like his like cosmological kind of mystical ideas, his ideas about the universe, and like his ideas that really mattered to him. He wasn't just saying it. These ideas that he had about what his music was representing or what it could do for people, he was also expressing that. I don't know how often he did it in program notes, but he definitely did it, like in articles that he wrote or in talks that he gave. So I think that, but then it's totally cool for a composer to say, who I want to be at my concert are people, for whom the frame of reference will be the technical understanding, like that's who I want to be there, or that's who I think is going to be there. So then, depending on who you think is going to be there or who you want to be there, then I think that's where the decision flows from, and I'm just encouraging people not to just like replicate the habits that you've established, about program notes. Like, okay, I'm a composer, so I give the technical information and that's just how I do it. Or I'm a performer, so I give these little kind of historical facts and that's just how I do it. Like the main thing is, I would say, try to tailor it, whatever that looks like.
And another thing to add to that, as Jane and I were preparing this webinar, we did both reflect on the fact that during our graduate school education in the United States, we didn't really have much about connecting with your audience. So actually this webinar topic is, I think, specifically trying to carve out a space for something we don't usually do in music departments, right? We think about the music and even sometimes autonomous music autonomous from any kind of social things. Of course, in ethnomusicology, we think about music as a human activity, and I know cultural musicology does that as well. But I think in some ways, the idea of audience is a different kind of question for today's younger musicians that I really think we should pay attention to. And that's part of why we brought in some of the ideas of branding and the idea of cultural entrepreneurship, that if you want to get paid, if you want to get attention, I think that there is a sense of like reading the room a little bit that's important today for younger artists and for all artists, actually, using this new social media world that we're all in, and obviously coming from a pandemic where a lot of people had to survive with online connecting. And so I think that that's sort of the space that we reviewed a number of articles and books on this topic, but we also just tried to come up with practical strategies that you guys might find helpful. And of course, there's many things beyond the 8 points that we gave you that would be useful, but please, feel free to email us if you come up with any others. So I think we've run out of time, given that this is kind of the end of the webinar. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. You will receive a link at the end of the week for accessing this webinar online, and it'll be available for a 3-week period. So please remember to join us tomorrow for 2 more webinars, one on the Taksim tradition in makam music from Turkey, as well as one on the topic of traditional and trans-traditional musics of the Turkish Mediterranean coast. And Yelda Hoca and others, Shirin Hoca, will be presenting as well tomorrow. So we're very excited to share part of our extended MIAM community with Medinea tomorrow as well.
Thank you so much, Jane. Thank you so much, Robert. Really, really interesting topic. I wish you all a great evening and see you maybe tomorrow. Bye.